I'm John Westby. This is my first episode of Instant Pot Brewing. And I gotta say, I was largely inspired by Steve Wilkes and James Spencer on Basic Brewing. James has been doing a lot of playing around with his Instant Pot, and after my wife attained one, I started reading through the manual and discovered that you could just about do a whole full cycle of a full grain mash or a full grain brewing recipe. And I just thought this would be an interesting opportunity to play around a little bit and maybe throw some ideas out there for anybody that would like to try some small scale brewing. This is definitely not a cheap way to have beer. This is just a way to experiment around with maybe some brew recipes. Or if you're in an apartment and you have not a lot of space, or you don't want a lot of smell, or you don't want to have a lot of inventory that you have to invest in for brewing, this is maybe a good way to cut your teeth. So what I've got is this will be an Instant Pot Pale Ale. I've done this one time before on the test just so I could see that it would actually work, and it came out okay. I was a little careless with the recipe. It was just something I made off the cuff, but I'm confident I can give this a second try and this will actually come out just like I'm expecting. So things you're going to need if this is first time brewing that you're going to need is obviously you're going to need an Instant Pot, and you're going to need some sanitizer. You're going to need some grain. I've got 3 pounds of 2-row and a 1/4 pound of honey malt, so it's a very simple recipe. And I've got 1 ounce of Cascade hops that we grew last summer in our garden. Also, you're going to need some bottle caps and a bottle capper. That'll come a couple weeks after we're done with what we're going to do today. But for today, we're going to just be using the Instant Pot, the grain, some of the hops, the sanitizer. We'll use a secondary kettle for sparging. And then lastly, you're going to need some kind of a fermenting vessel. I have had pretty good luck with doing small batches in some tea jars. I can attach my bottling wand right to the spigot there when it's ready. It's time to start bottling. So I think that covers basically what you'll need to have for the basic brew day. Oh, and some yeast. Now I've saved this. This is a Safel SO5 pale ale yeast, a dry pale ale yeast. You could use a package. You don't have to use liquid yeast, but you're going to use about 1/4 of the amount you normally would in a full brew day for 5 gallons. So maybe like a 1/4 package if you decide to buy some dry ale yeast. Well, you'll have to buy some dry ale yeast. Okay, so with that, I'm going to kind of reorganize here and we'll get started. Okay, so we are going to set up our mash water right now, and we need a strike water temperature of 163 degree Fahrenheit with 1.52 gallons of water for a mash time of 1 hour, and that'll be for 3.25 grain or total pounds of grain. So we can go ahead. The nice thing about the Instant Pot is that we can set the temperature at a known level right here. So we want our strike temperature at 163.6. I'm going to go for 164-ish, and I can set that just by going custom, and temperature is going to be custom, and I can go up here and adjust the temperature. Now I'm going to go to 173 on this, and everybody should check their own temperature on their Instant Pot. It turns out mine is about 10 degrees lower than what the reading says on the front. So double check it with the thermometer just to make sure that your temperature is what you need it to be, because it's really pretty critical that your strike water and your mashing temperatures are very close to what we're aiming for. And today we're going to try to mash at about 155 degrees. So our strike water, that's just going to be the initial temperature of the water when we add the cooler grains. And what will happen is a lot of the grain will soak up some water and cool it down to our target temperature of 155. So I'm going to set that at 172. And then when this beeps at me saying that it's at that temperature, I'm going to double check it with my thermometer, make sure that it's at 162. Oh, I'm sorry, I said 163. I'm going to just turn that up 1 degree. That'll make all the difference in the world. Okay. And then I'm just going to hit enter and start. And in about probably 20 minutes or so, this should be up to temperature. And we'll start adding our grains. Okay, so there we go. Now this, it rang, or it beeped at me telling me that that we were there. Remember I had set the temperature to 173 because that was about 10 degrees lower. When I measured the temperature, it was actually like 145. So I ran it up to 177, let it go for about another 10 minutes or so, and then I just checked the temperature frequently, and then beeped again here at me. So we'll just check it one last time here before we. Well, maybe I'll need my wife's help here. There's a little pressure in there. Okay, check it one last time here. And so we should be at 144, 148, 157, 8, 9, 60, 160. 2.7, 163.5. It looks like it's about settle there. Okay, so we're at our strike water temperature. Now remember, we want our mashing temperature to be at 155. So we're getting the water a little bit hotter right now, so we can add colder grains. That's going to cool down the temperature of the water to keep it at 155. Now I'm going to go ahead and adjust the temperature right now. I'm thinking we hit cancel first. And then I'm going to go back to custom. And actually, I'm just going to leave that flashing on custom for right now. I want to cover a couple of things here. I did mention earlier, I did need to mention to you, this is an 8-pot or an 8-quart Instant Pot, which is really, that's for a small batch, it's about right. I don't know that I want to go a lot smaller than that, or you'll only be making about 3 bottles of beer. But we're looking for a boil volume of 1.65 to 1.7 gallons. It's going to be just a little over the max pressure cook limit, and this is going to be a pressure cycle accelerated boil while we do this. So I got all the mash numbers, and all the mash numbers I've got with the temperatures, I just used the mash water calculator that's available on Bruto's website. I just plug in the numbers of the grain I've got and the volumes that my target volumes, which were right around, a little better than 1.5 is what I was aiming for. I'm looking for a finished batch for the fermenter of 1.5 gallons. I don't think I'll get there. I'll be a little less than that, but that's kind of what I'm aiming for. So I'm real close to this. Our temperature, our strike water temperature is right where we want it to be. So I am going to go ahead and add my 3 1/4 pounds total grain. That's 3 pounds of 2-row and a 1/4 pound of honey malt. A little bit of color, a little bit of mouthfeel, and it smells nice. What else would I do without destroying the bag here? Okay. So, what? Let me get a number on it here. Let's see. So I'll just very carefully put this in here and try not to goop it up too much. It's barely going to fit. That's why we really are kind of at our limit for what we can do with the Instant Pot. I'm just going to stir it in there. Pour. That's going to bring us right up to the tippy top. Just like that. That's okay. We're not. The only thing we're doing here is we're going to mash. We're going to mash our grain. And all that means is that we want to convert the starches into sugars. And actually we don't do it. We just there's amylase in the grain. It's an enzyme that works optimally at about 140 to 165 degrees, but we're aiming for 155. And it'll convert all those starches into simple sugars. So I'm just going to stir that up a little bit. I'm going to take one more temperature reading here, just to see where we're at. We should be pretty close to our 155 target. And it's kind of a slow thermometer. Someday I'll buy a better one maybe here. So we're 147, 149, 152, 153, 154, 154.5, 154.8, 155.2, so 155.6. So it looks like we're getting pretty close. Looks like 160. It's going to settle on 160. So that's going to be our mash temperature. And it's going to take about an hour. It's going to take about an hour for all of those simple starches to. It's going to take about an hour for all those simple starches to convert into sugar. So I'm going to go back to the Instant Pot, turn it on here, and I'm on Ultra, so I'm going to go to. We're at Custom, and our temperature is. I'm going to aim for 165. Because I'm still convinced that 150, I'm about 10 degrees cold in my Instant Pot. So I'm going to run with that. It's going to go for an hour. We're going to mash for an hour. So I'm going to go ahead and push start. And then I'll close her back up. And we should be good to go for about an hour. Now, the one thing that I probably should have done here that I didn't do was take off the actual pressure lock on the Instant Pot. That's why I built up a little bit of pressure while I was waiting for my mash water to warm up. You certainly don't want to burn yourself, but you can release the pressure, but it's just easier to open this up and let it bleed off pressure as it starts going. Now, once we actually start the boil, we're going to put that on there and we're going to run it up to a full pressure cycle for our boil, for boiling it through. So.